You can sit in a room full of people and feel absolutely nothing. Not calm, nothing. And you have learned to call that being okay. You laugh at things that should probably hurt more. You stay strangely calm during emergencies. You notice tiny changes in people's tone before anyone else does. You always know where the exits are. You cannot fully relax in public even when nothing is wrong. And somehow, the people around you think this means you are strong. But these are not personality traits. They are survival patterns. And what they are a map of. What your nervous system had to become in order to survive everything it survived is something most people around you will never fully understand. Because surviving too much does not always leave visible scars. Sometimes it changes the way your body experiences safety itself. That is why some people can sit in complete silence and still feel internally alert. Their body never fully learned how to stop scanning. Even in peaceful moments, something inside them remains awake, watching, listening, preparing. You see it in small ways. The seat they choose in restaurants, the way they glance toward sudden noises without thinking, the way crowded places slowly drain them emotionally, even if they never show it outwardly. Most people think hyperawareness is intelligence, but often it is exhaustion. A nervous system that learned very early that safety could disappear without warning. So now it watches everything. Not because it wants to, because it no longer knows how not to. That is the strange thing about survival mode. After enough emotional chaos, your body stops treating peace like peace. It starts treating peace like the moment before something goes wrong. And that changes people deeply, especially emotionally. Because eventually you stop experiencing the world normally. You start experiencing it cautiously. You read people carefully. You notice emotional shifts immediately. You analyze silence. You detect tension before anyone says a word. And most people never realize how tiring that actually is. To constantly feel responsible for sensing danger before it arrives. Some people develop this in childhood. Others developed it through betrayal. Through emotionally unpredictable relationships. Through spending too long around people who made safety feel temporary. And eventually, their nervous system adapted to uncertainty so completely that calmness itself started feeling unfamiliar. That is why people who survived too much often feel strangely disconnected during normal life. Not because they lack emotions, because their body has been prioritizing survival over presence for too long. And over time, that survival awareness becomes automatic. You stop noticing how much energy you spend monitoring everything around you. Until one day, you realize you are exhausted, even in environments that are supposed to feel safe. But hyperawareness is only the beginning. Because one of the hidden signs you survived too much is how strangely comfortable you became with chaos itself. Most people panic during real emergencies. You become focused, clear, emotionally still. While everyone else is overwhelmed, your nervous system suddenly knows exactly what to do. And that confuses people, because they see your calmness and assume you are emotionally strong. But often, that calmness was built inside environments where panic was never allowed, where emotional survival depended on staying functional no matter how overwhelmed you actually felt internally. So eventually, chaos stopped feeling unfamiliar. It started feeling normal, predictable, almost comfortable, and that creates a strange psychological paradox. Minor inconveniences overwhelm you emotionally, while major disasters barely affect your expression at all. Because your nervous system does not react based on logic anymore. It reacts based on familiarity. And deep down, chaos feels familiar. Stillness does not. That is why people who survived too much often struggle the most in ordinary peaceful moments. Because when the external chaos finally disappears, they are left alone with the internal survival state that never fully turned off. And eventually, survival stops looking dramatic. It starts looking ordinary, highly functional, emotionally controlled, independent. That is why so many people who survived too much go unnoticed, because they learned how to appear fine long before they actually felt safe. You see it in the way they handle emotional pain. They rarely fall apart in front of others. Instead, they become quieter, more private, more emotionally self-contained. Not because they trust themselves more than everyone else, because at some point, depending on other people emotionally became dangerous. So they adapted. They learned how to carry everything alone, and people started calling them strong for it. But what most people call strength is sometimes just someone who no longer feels safe enough to fall apart openly. That is why emotionally exhausted people often become extremely independent. Not because they enjoy isolation, because their nervous system learned that vulnerability without safety creates deeper pain. So they stop asking for help, stop explaining themselves, stop expecting emotional support to truly last. And after enough disappointment, they begin emotionally preparing for loss before loss even happens. That changes relationships deeply, because now connection feels complicated. Part of them wants closeness. The other part stays alert for abandonment the entire time. So even while being loved, their body remains prepared to lose it. And over time, this creates another hidden survival pattern most people misunderstand completely. Dark humor, the ability to joke about painful things with disturbing calmness. Most people think this means someone is detached from their pain, but often it means the opposite. Sometimes humor becomes the safest way to hold unbearable emotions without drowning inside them. Because if pain becomes laughter for a moment, it becomes survivable. That is why people who survived too much often become emotionally intelligent in painfully quiet ways. They recognize emotional suffering quickly. They become the calm one during crisis, the emotionally aware one, the safe person for everyone else. Because surviving pain taught them how to recognize pain everywhere. But what people rarely notice is how little emotional care these people usually give themselves. They know how to comfort everyone except their own nervous system. And eventually, that imbalance creates a very quiet loneliness, being deeply understood by nobody while constantly understanding everyone else. That loneliness changes a person slowly. You begin missing versions of yourself you barely remember anymore. The softer version, the version that trusted more easily, the version that could fully relax without preparing for disappointment. And sometimes, that grief becomes heavier than the original pain itself. Because now you are not only grieving what happened to you, you are grieving the person you might have become if survival was never necessary in the first place. But this is the part most people never hear. Your nervous system is not trying to ruin your life. It is trying to protect the version of you that survived. Every survival pattern, the hyperawareness, the emotional distance, the dark humor, the independence, all of it once served a purpose. Your mind adapted exactly the way it needed to. And maybe the most important realization is this: surviving too much did not make you weak. It made your nervous system learn survival too well. That is different. Because people who survived deep emotional chaos often spend years believing something is wrong with them, when in reality, their body simply never learned that the danger was over. And healing does not begin when you force yourself to become who you were before. Sometimes healing begins when you finally stop hating yourself for adapting to what hurt you. Because underneath all the exhaustion, there is still a person inside you who never stopped wanting peace. Not survival, peace, and slowly, when the nervous system finally begins realizing safety is possible again, something beautiful starts happening. You stop scanning every room. You stop preparing for emotional disaster before it arrives. You stop mistaking exhaustion for personality. And for the first time in a very long time, you begin experiencing life as something other than survival. Not perfectly, not all at once, but enough to finally realize this. You were never broken. You were carrying too much for too long, and somehow, you are still here.